how are you? This is a explanation. It's a little bit of an addition to our very simple corporate model. And in this further explanation, we're going to add a constraint so the company must keep a minimum cash balance. Last time, let's just review what we did last time. Last time, step one is to start with a historic balance sheet, historic financial statements. Step two is to work through operations and get some operating assumptions. Then we have some financing assumptions. We had an interest income rate, an interest expense rate, and a dividend payout ratio. We put in our depreciation, and we didn't put in the retirements, which we'll come to. And we then went through our cash balance and net balance. And here's the problem. We allowed our cash balance to go all the way down to zero. So let's just see how we would, and then after that we put a profit and loss statement, a cash flow statement, and we made sure our balance sheet balanced. The profit and loss statement was very straightforward. It was all just from the line items that had already been defined above. The cash flow statement was okay until we got to the net cash flow, and then we had to use a couple of these minimum and maximum functions to work through a cash flow waterfall. And we started with what happens to the cash flow, and if it's positive, we reduce the cash flow, and that reduction in cash flow, that's a negative. If the cash flow is negative, we took some money out of our cash balance, so that adds to the cash flow. Then we computed a subtotal to see if anything was left over, because we have some constraints on just how much we can reduce or how much we can add to the cash flow. And the leftover amounts are either thrown in the cash balance or included in additional debt. That's that. And once we have that all together, the big deal on the balance sheet was take the closing balance from each of these amounts upstairs. Now, let's just add one more assumption. And the assumption is simply going to be to put a minimum cash balance. Now, let's make this cash balance something like, how about the EBITDA times 5%? I shouldn't really do that. Okay. All right. Okay, so our cash balance, the smallest cash balance, is going up over time, and obviously we don't want to allow this cash balance to go down to zero. Here's a suggestion on how to do that and make it transparent. So let's put our minimum cash balance here and just take the assumption we just entered. Okay, and then let's add another line, and we'll put surplus cash available for negative cash flow. You would never write it like this. I'm trying to write it so at least I can understand it. We take the opening balance, and this is the amount we could actually reduce the cash flow by. Now, we cannot have that be negative, so let's put a maximum of this, or 0. Okay, and now let's just go down, and when we make our minimums a function with our maximum and minimum in the cash flow waterfall, we should use the amount we have available, and we shouldn't simply use the opening balance. And I don't believe it created any circular reference or anything like that. We don't have our iterative calculations, and the balance sheet still balanced, and we had this much cash flow, cash, and I suppose there's one thing I didn't do. You know, sorry about that. I made a mistake. Typical for me. I tried to do something a little more fancy than I normally do, but that's all right. Let's add one more item here, and we need to add one more item that says required additional cash, and our required, when we have the minimum cash minus the original cash, that's how much cash we have to put in. Now we'll do another maximum, make another maximum, make sure that that's not negative, and then we can simply go down below the dividends and say add less added cash to fund minimum MINIMUM. So that just comes from upstairs. This time it comes from the minimum cash balance, and we better subtract this. Now our balance sheet won't balance, I hope, because we have to do something with that cash. What we needed to do is also, when it says add new cash generated, we have to also include the additional amount that we just added here, and whew, it all balances. Okay, that I suppose was a little bit more complicated, but that's one way. I'm sure you could come up with 100 other ways to reflect the minimum cash balance. That's enough. Only 7 minutes on that video, nice and short.